We are used to thinking that modern soldiers are the absolute peak of human evolution. They have energy drinks, tactical medkits, thermal underwear, and protein bars. Now picture a Roman legionnaire. He's dragging 60 pounds of gear through blistering heat, fighting in brutal hand-to-hand combat for hours, and his only medical support is a prayer to Mars and a dirty rag. How did they survive? We tend to view our ancestors as primitive brutes who won battles through sheer, dumb force. But here is what's absolutely insane. Modern military labs and sports scientists recently started analyzing their habits. And guess what? It turns out ancient armies used biohacks that completely destroy modern supplements and technologies. They didn't know words like electrolytes, microbiome, or neurotransmitters. But they controlled them way better than we do today. For example, if you hit the gym today, you'll probably grab a bottle of your favorite sports drink. But what did the Roman legionnaires drink while conquering the known world? They drank something that would make you gag today. It was called posca. What is it? It's water mixed with sour, spoiled wine vinegar. Sounds like a punishment, right? In reality, this was the ultimate secret to Roman endurance. Back then, drinking water on a military campaign was basically playing Russian roulette. Drink from the wrong puddle, and half the legion dies of dysentery before the battle even starts. But the Romans noticed something. If you add vinegar, the water becomes safe. And here is where modern science steps in. Laboratory tests show that the acetic acid in wine vinegar instantly kills E. coli and other bacteria. But that's not all. Posca was absolutely loaded with potassium and sodium. The Romans, without even realizing it, invented the perfect isotonic sports drink 2,000 years before corporations started selling US sugar water in plastic bottles. Posca prevented dehydration, stopped muscle cramps after brutal marches, and provided clean energy. When Jesus was given a sponge soaked in vinegar on the cross, it wasn't an act of cruelty, as many believe. A Roman soldier was literally sharing his military ration, his ancient Red Bull. All right, so they had the water figured out. But what about food? Today's special forces have MERS that include everything from self-heating pads to chocolate. Now imagine Japanese samurai. They would sit in ambush or march through freezing mountain passes for weeks. They couldn't light a fire, the smoke would give away their position. Hauling heavy bags of rice was impractical. So what did they do? They literally ate their own clothes. No, seriously. Samurai used something called imo-garanawa. It was a long rope used as a belt to secure their swords or armor. But this wasn't just a belt, it was a genius survival ration. This rope was made from taro stems. Before marching, they would boil these stems in a thick miso paste for hours and then dry them in the sun. Picture this. A samurai is sitting in a dark forest, starving and freezing. He simply cuts off a piece of his belt, drops it into a small pot of boiling water, or just chews on it raw if he can't make a fire, and instantly gets a highly nutritious soup. Once again, modern science gives a standing ovation. Miso paste is a pure probiotic powerhouse. Modern gastroenterologists know that under extreme stress like fighting a war, human digestion practically shuts down. But the fermented soy in the samurai's belt maintained a perfect gut microbiome, delivering a massive dose of amino acids and protein. They were wearing concentrated, non-perishable energy around their waists. Today, you pay top dollar for fermented superfoods at organic hipster markets. The samurai used it to hold their pants up. But the real horror started when a warrior got injured. Picture the Middle Ages in Europe. A knight has just been slashed by a broadsword. Blood is gushing everywhere. Antibiotics don't exist, they won't be invented until the 20th century. The battlefield doctor runs over and does the most unsanitary thing imaginable. He grabs a handful of dirty cobwebs from the corner of a stable and stuffs it straight into the open wound. Then, he slaps a piece of green, moldy bread right on top. Sounds like a guaranteed recipe for gangrene and a painful death, right? If you went to the ER today with a cut and the doctor reached for a broom to grab some spiderwebs, you'd call the cops. But medieval doctors, who we often dismiss as butchers, knew something incredible. Spider silk is a natural miracle. Modern electron microscopes have revealed that spiderwebs are packed with vitamin K. That's the exact vitamin responsible for blood clotting. When the web was packed into a wound, it created a perfect microscopic matrix that triggered instant clotting. It stopped bleeding faster than many modern bandages. Even better, spider silk doesn't trigger an immune rejection, it's highly biocompatible with the human body. And what about the moldy bread? This will blow your mind. The mold growing on bread is literally natural penicillin. Hundreds of years before Alexander Fleming won a Nobel Prize for discovering antibiotics, European military medics, Egyptians, and Greeks were intuitively using mold to kill bacteria in horrific wounds. They didn't know how it worked. They thought it was magic or spirits, but it saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Next, let's talk about combat stimulants. How do you make a man feel absolutely zero pain and march to his death with a smile? Today, we have heavy pharmacology. 1,000 years ago, they had Viking berserkers. We've all heard the legends. Warriors who stripped off their armor, howled like wolves, bit chunks out of their own shields, and kept fighting even with 3 spears sticking out of their chests. Historians argued for decades about how they did this. For a long time, the consensus was that they ate Amanita muscaria before battle. But modern neurobiology and toxicology stepped in and said, hold on. Magic mushrooms cause severe nausea, hallucinations, and a complete loss of motor coordination. A guy tripping on Amanita can barely hold an axe, let alone fight an army. He'd be too busy talking to a tree. So what were they actually taking? In 1977, archaeologists excavating Viking settlements found pouches filled with the seeds of a plant called black henbane. And suddenly, the puzzle pieces fit perfectly. Henbane contains scopolamine and hyoscyamine. These are powerful alkaloids that do absolutely wild things to the nervous system. They completely shut off pain receptors, trigger explosive bouts of unbridled aggression, and induce severe tunnel vision, meaning you only see the target in front of you and nothing else. The most fascinating part: after the henbane wears off, the user experiences a crushing hangover, memory loss, and total physical exhaustion for days. This perfectly matches the old Icelandic sagas, which describe berserkers sleeping for days after a battle, having zero memory of butchering their enemies. The Vikings literally invented a combat neuro-stimulant. They hacked their own nervous systems using a little yellow flower growing by the roadside. Now, let's cross the ocean to the Americas. Let's talk about pure endurance. If you've ever run a 10K, you know how hard your lungs burn. The Apache and other Native American tribes had messengers who would run up to 100 miles a day across the scorching desert. Picture this: brutal heat, deep sand, and absolutely no shock-absorbing running shoes. To train young warriors for this kind of god-tier endurance, the elders did something completely bizarre. They forced the boys to fill their mouths with water before embarking on a 15 to 20-mile run. If the young man spat the water out at the end of the trail, he passed. If he swallowed it or spat it out along the way, he was disgraced and failed. Sounds like pointless torture, right? Why run with a mouthful of water? Well, go ask today's Olympic track coaches or Navy SEALs. They'll give you a lecture on the absolute necessity of nasal breathing. When we run and breathe through our mouths, we lose massive amounts of moisture and overstress our hearts. The Native Americans, by plugging the mouth with water, forced the body to adapt to breathing exclusively through the nose. Modern sports science has proven that nasal breathing releases nitric oxide in the nasal cavities. This gas dilates blood vessels, increases oxygen absorption in the blood by up to 20%, and actually lowers your resting heart rate while running. The Apache didn't have lab equipment to measure VO2 max, but they engineered a training system that modern ultra-marathoners are now desperately trying to copy. Those guys were running distances that would put modern athletes in the hospital, simply because they knew exactly how to inhale air. Finally, let's talk about the deadliest enemy in military history, a killer that took out more sailors and soldiers than all the cannons in the world combined. Scurvy. During the Age of Discovery, the British Navy was losing thousands of men just by sailing the ocean. Their teeth would fall out, old scars would mysteriously tear open and bleed, and men would literally rot alive. Everyone thought it was caused by bad air or the rolling of the ship. Then, Captain James Cook sets off on a 3-year voyage around the world. In those days, that was a death sentence for at least half the crew. But Cook returns to England without losing a single man to scurvy. Why? He forced his hardened, battle-scarred sailors to eat sauerkraut. The sailors absolutely hated it. They practically mutinied over it. To get them to eat it, Cook pulled a psychological masterstroke. He ordered that the sauerkraut only be served to the high-ranking officers and told the regular crew it was a delicacy not meant for them. Naturally, the sailors immediately started stealing it and eating it by the bucket. Pure reverse psychology. But why sauerkraut? Science wouldn't even discover vitamin C until 1912. Before then, the concept of a vitamin didn't exist. Cook just noticed that Dutch sailors who ate cabbage didn't get sick as often. Here is the kicker. The process of fermentation doesn't just keep the cabbage from rotting in a ship's hold for months, it actually multiplies the amount of vitamin C and makes it highly bioavailable. One stinking barrel of sour cabbage did more to expand the British Empire than an entire fleet of warships. Every single one of these stories proves one simple truth. We look down on the past. We have smartphones, artificial intelligence, and expensive pills. But time and time again, modern science looks through a microscope and begrudgingly admits, our ancestors were right. They drank sour vinegar, ate their own clothes, packed wounds with mold, and ran with water in their mouths. They didn't do it out of ignorance, they did it because it worked. Their laboratory was the battlefield, and the price of a failed experiment was death. They left us a treasure trove of cheat codes for the human body, and we just forgot about them, trading them in for pretty labels at the pharmacy. If a modern man were dropped into those conditions without his gadgets, he wouldn't last a week. They built empires. History isn't just a collection of boring dates in a dusty textbook. It's an epic saga of how humanity survived against all odds. These are the Chronicles of Time. If you want to uncover more hidden secrets of the past and see how our ancestors lived, fought, and conquered, hit that subscribe button. This is Chronicles of Time. Let me know in the comments which warrior hack surprised you the most. Was it the vinegar water or the spiderweb bandages? See you in the past.